Yeah, so hey everybody, happy to be back with you all again. I'm going to talk about both Federation and then touch on dynamic groups as well. And just kind of as a heads up, I'm going to be talking pretty briefly about Federation today as we're still kind of finishing out the functionality here. But I will totally be back in the future to talk about this much more in depth. But I'm going to go ahead and happy to introduce it today and take questions as well. So Federated authentication with an external identity provider. What does this actually mean? Basically, at JumpCloud, historically, we have supported outbound single sign-on. So basically, we provide single sign-on with SAML and OIDC to downstream SaaS apps. This is the JumpCloud single sign-on you all know and love. What we're doing is basically adding single sign-on inbound into JumpCloud. So you can bring an identity provider like Okta or Google or Azure and use those identity providers to be able to facilitate single sign-on from that upstream identity provider into JumpCloud as a service provider. And then JumpCloud can then basically turn it back into an identity provider and go do single sign-on into any downstream resources or get you into any other resources you might have. So basically, historically, downstream single sign-on, Federation, upstream single sign-on into JumpCloud. So roughly what this will look like is in JumpCloud, you can set up an identity provider. We're going to start with Okta, but we'll be adding Google and Azure pretty soon. You set up an identity provider in JumpCloud. And as you can kind of see up here, what this is basically going to look like to a user is they'll continue to sign in with JumpCloud. But if we see that you have an identity provider configured, we're actually going to redirect you over to that identity provider using OIDC to authenticate the user. And then they're going to come back over and be able to, whether it's single self-service account provisioning into their device or single sign-on out to downstream applications, getting a user portal, et cetera. Any JumpCloud resource where you're using a browser-based session, you'll be able to actually go sign in with these upstream identity providers, and then JumpCloud is brokering that authentication. So again, you can keep your existing identity provider, let users sign in with that identity provider, but get into your device with self-service account provisioning. You get in the user portal, single sign-on into downstream applications, etc. So again, we're still finishing, putting the finishing touches on this. We're going to do a really limited closed beta right now with some incomplete kind of functionality for now, still getting this finished up. But later this year and looking into early next year, we're looking to be able to get this out and into general availability. It's going to be a super simple setup. You basically come in, you give your identity provider a name, you provide your URL, client ID, and client secret. This is using the auth code flow, and then you have an identity provider that is configured. We're going to actually go to this IDP URL, and using the well-known configuration, we'll grab all the OIDC endpoints that we need to make the authentication happen. And then you'll be set up to use Federated authentication. So that being said, yeah, Brandon. Yeah, so you're using JumpCloud, you're using Okta to sign into JumpCloud. So for instance, if you're like looking at self-service account provisioning, which I think Scott may have talked about in the past, when I'm going to, I'm a user and I'm getting a new laptop and I open it up and I click sign in with JumpCloud, I open up, instead of signing directly into JumpCloud with my JumpCloud credentials, I'm actually getting redirected over to Okta, signing in with my Okta credentials, which then allows me to get into JumpCloud and then get an account provisioned on my device. And then, looking ahead, if you think of like, if I'm a user and I'm trying to do SSO into Salesforce, instead of signing in with JumpCloud, I'm actually going to get redirected over to Google or Azure, sign in with my Google or Azure credentials, come back to JumpCloud, and then get into my my application. What happens if there's not a matching identity on the identity provider end? Great question. So one prerequisite is you'll have to have the user on both the JumpCloud side and the identity provider side. So for instance, if you're using Azure AD or Intra ID, you have to have the user already exist over there in that identity provider, and you also have to have the user exist on the JumpCloud side. Both Okta and Azure Intra support SCIM real-time provisioning, so you can set that up to be able to create users in real time into JumpCloud. And then we do have the user import with Google. But yeah, the prerequisite is they have to be on both ends to start with. We have to match up on a unique identifier. And this is really used, to your question, Nick, to be able to keep your existing identity provider, but also use all of the great functionality in JumpCloud. Or if you have certain places where you want users to sign in with an upstream identity provider, you can do that. How does this work in terms of local device passwords? Great question. You'll have the ability to set up a local password on the device. We can use Windows Hello, so we can have a local PIN on the device that never uses the device, but then use Federation to actually be able to provision that account for the first time and do self-service password and PIN resets on Mac. Of course, there's no Windows Hello or PIN available, but you will be able to have a local password on Mac. If you don't want the local password and you do want a JumpCloud password to get synced down to the device, but users still to be able to sign in with an identity provider, we'll be able to support that as well. So again, that's going to be more similar to what you've always known, where you have a JumpCloud password getting synced down to the device, but users can sign in with an identity provider where possible. So obviously, you're going to have a credential on the device. That can be either JumpCloud managed with password sync or local without password sync, but then users can still sign in the user portal, do self-service password resets, etc., with an external identity provider. All right, I'm going to scroll up now. Sorry, I was taking the last questions first.
There's one more, Trevor, sorry.
Okay.
Just putting it up on the screen now. What's the use case for external IDP if JC already accesses the IDP?
Yeah, so in that case, Federation might not be for you. If you're totally happy and you don't, and your use case wouldn't benefit from having an external identity provider, obviously totally cool to stay with JumpCloud as the identity provider. We love it. This is just giving you more flexibility if you're an organization that wants to let users continue to sign in with Okta or Google or Azure, but still use JumpCloud as well for whether it's single sign-on, device management, etc. So if you're happy with JumpCloud as the identity provider, great, that's perfect. We love it. And if you would rather have users sign in with one of these providers, we're going to be very soon supporting that as well.
And we have one more.
Yeah.
Well, this one is fun, I think.
Okay.
With this cover federated authentication between accounts, account A can sign into account B. Account B also has local users that only sign into account B.
This cover federated authentication between accounts. No, if you're asking about being able to sign in with multiple user accounts within the same JumpCloud tenant, no. That wouldn't be covered under at least this kind of our first pass at Federation. Definitely be interested to hear if you have a use case that would benefit from that. So if that's something that of a use case, please feel free to hit me up. I can put my email in the chat when I'm done for any additional questions or feedback. But I'm interested to hear your case there. One thing we'd like to do in the longer term is be able to support federation between JumpCloud tenants. You're not seeing that on the screen yet. That's not kind of in our short-term plans, but it is in the longer-term plans to be able to allow a user in one JumpCloud org sign into another JumpCloud org. So I'm interested to hear your case of that happening within the same JumpCloud tenant.
Thank you.
See me on JumpCloud Slack. Yeah, sounds good, Ross. Cool. Okay. That being said, so that's Federation. Again, yeah, feel free to reach out on the JumpCloud Lounge or email me directly with any questions. But again, this is, we're wrapping, we're putting the finishing touches on this right now. So you'll probably hear from me in a future IT hour to do a deeper dive once we have this all finished up and ready to go out. But that being said, that is Federation. And I'm going to touch on dynamic groups really quickly. So you all heard about this from Derek a while back, but just touching on dynamic groups quickly for those of you that might have missed it, we now support in general availability the ability to have both dynamic user groups and dynamic device groups. So basically, in short, what this means is our groups, user groups and device groups, you can now add rules or conditions to these groups with many different attributes to be able to let users move in and out of these groups automatically without you needing to manually touch the groups at all. So on the user group side, we have several different attributes here. We also have exemptions. So if you have users that may meet one of these attribute conditions, but you don't actually want them in the group, or they don't meet the condition, but you always want them in the group, you can also add them to the exemption list as well. And basically what that means is our rules engine will just totally ignore those users and they'll continue to be in the group or out of the group based on your preference. That's dynamic user groups, several different attributes there. If you're a new JumpCloud tenant, you're going to see a default dynamic group get created for all users. That's going to be set up like this. So every user in your org will always be in that group unless you add them to the exemption list. And then, of course, you can create all the custom groups you want with with your own attribute conditions. Over on the dynamic group side, device group side, very similar to here too. We have several different attributes so you can set up dynamic device groups and let devices move in and out of these groups accordingly. Again, we also have exemptions over here as well, so you can include and exclude from these groups as needed. But that is dynamic user and device groups. I'm happy to take questions here. All right, are there plans to add a contains operator? There are, yes. That is in the works. We have a couple different additional operators that should be coming out. So we'll keep you updated on the timeline there and what that looks like when that'll be in general availability. But that is absolutely planned. ETA. Luke, you're asking the hard questions. I don't have an ETA now, but I will. Again, as soon as we have a concrete ETA and when this will be available, I will update the group ASAP, whether it's getting that answer back out on the IT hour or getting that update in JumpCloud Lounge, etc. Yeah, exactly, Rob. The ETA is ETA. It's expected to be announced, but not quite yet. But yes, that is absolutely, you're going to see that. You're going to see that coming sooner rather than later. What's the migration scheme for those of us that have existing static group definitions? How do we upgrade? That is a great question. Do I dare go over and share my admin portal? Don't want to tempt the live demo gods, but the migration for an existing static group, and I'm guessing, Jonathan, that you're asking for groups that have existing group suggestions, but they're not fully dynamic. And if that is the case, you switch over to dynamic, and then you leave this box right here, require administrator review of updates unchecked, and that is basically a fully dynamic group. So your rules will still be there, but you won't have an admin have to go in and every single time check and accept or deny those suggestions. That's right, Rob. So Jonathan, hopefully that answers your question. If not, just let me know in the chat. Are there plans to allow us to use Bell or Ognal? Not yet. Right now, our rules engine is just what you see here with using, assuming I'm understanding your question there, right? To use the attributes and operators that we offer here. Again, not to say that couldn't change in the future. So if you have a use case, please reach out in more detail so we can be tracking and understanding that. Can exclusions in dynamic groups be rules-based as well? Never add a user with admin in description. Ooh, that is an interesting one. That's a great question. Right now, we don't have plans to add that. It's on a specific user or a specific device basis, but basically having a rule that doesn't add them to the group, I'm assuming is what you're after there. Yeah. That's a good one. So I can take that back to Derek and the team. But yeah, I can say right now we don't have short-term plans to add that. The exemptions are specific user or device based, but I can definitely take that as a future request for sure. And I see a couple different reactions there, so I'm assuming that would help several of you out as well. So I'm definitely taking that back.
One more point of feedback.
Please add ability to reference other groups. So actually being able, I don't know if this is what you're asking or not, but I know one thing we're looking at doing is being able to link together user and device groups dynamically. So we have plans to do that. If you're looking for something else here, okay, maybe you're saying like if they're in this group, also add them to this group. So if they're in group A, add to group B. Yeah, that's a super interesting one. And if that's what you're after, I can say that you could accomplish that now on a workaround basis by obviously just having the same attributes conditions set up. But I'm assuming you're looking for something a bit more robust there. So that's a good one. Yeah, I can totally take that back. We don't have short-term plans to do that, but can totally take that back. I mean, let me just pause and say, like, I'm super pumped to hear the questions and requests here, because dynamic groups just released here over the last couple months, and I know that we're already getting a ton of feedback wanting more features and more robustness here, which makes me super pumped to hear that you all are interested in getting more functionality there. So I'm hoping that the dynamic groups have been super beneficial for you all. There's not contains operator. Would that work? Yeah, maybe so. That might help out with the exemptions. Not moved to get they haven't been flexible enough. Okay. Yeah, Luke, happy to, if you want to give me more details in chat or reach out separately, I'm happy to hear, again, if you have any specific requests for what you would need to be added to make dynamic groups flexible enough for your use case. I'm happy to hear that. Is there a way to have nested groups, or is that coming? No plans to add nested groups right now. For now, being able to accomplish what you would want with nested groups would have to be facilitated through dynamic group rules. But again, as always, like, I know we get requests for nested groups. It's something we're constantly evaluating. Right now, we're looking at kind of solving that problem through dynamic groups as opposed to nested groups. But again, as always, like, happy to hear the use case and try to understand if there's a need there. As someone who came from a prior, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I'm going to put a link in here to submit a feature request. It's a guide to submit feature requests. So put those in. Sorry, continue, Trevor.
Awesome. No. Yeah, totally. Thank you for that. Yeah. No, I was going to say, as someone who came from a prior organization with a on-prem AD deployment that had hundreds of thousands of users, and it's like our nested group structure there was just wild. So hearing nested groups kind of gives me I get a little bit shaky when I hear that, but I know that's totally, I know there's totally a valid case there. So yeah, for sure, like, keep letting us know if there's demand there for nested groups. If no nested groups, then let us copy an existing group. Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. That's a great one. And that would, I know, like, help you all to be able to, configure some pretty complex rule conditions and be able to drop those onto new groups. Okay. Seems like it's slowing down a bit, and I don't want to give plenty of time for the other folks here. So I am going to stop sharing now. I'll continue to look at the chat and make sure I didn't miss anything. So if there's anything else, please reach out there, or hit me up in the JumpCloud Lounge, etc. Thanks, y'all.
Yes, you can keep popping the questions in the chat, and I will pass those on to Trevor. Up next, we have Sergi talking about Android. Stage is yours. And thank you, Trevor.
Thank you. Good job, Trevor, there. Awesome. Okay, let me share my screen. I think we're up and rolling. So, hey everyone, Sergi Bellis here, Principal Product Manager for Mobility. I want to do a very, very quick overview of where we are in our Android EMM journey, and really focus the bulk of my discussion today on the things that we announced in our press release, as well as the aspect that we alluded to in terms of coming soon. So just a little bit of a disclaimer, but at a high level, right? Android EMM offers a ton of flexibility. We started off evaluating which ones would be most pertinent to our customers, whether you're on the very privacy conscientious side with BYOD, or really on a control, fully managed.
Please subscribe and check out more content from us.